past few weeks, Indians have become more and more worried about the inflation rate, or the rate at which prices are rising. Last month, retail inflation, which is measured by using the Consumer Price Index for May, came in at 6.3%, that is 30 basis points above the highest level of inflation that RBI targets. Later this week, we should have the data for June. These data points will be crucial in determining RBI's monetary policy stances when it meets in August. For the most part, public attention has been on the rising oil prices and their impact on the inflation rate. Oil prices have been high and rising for two broad reasons. One is the rising prices of imported crude oil. Well, India depends on oil imports to meet more than 80% of its domestic requirement, and the other is the taxation of refined fuel within the country. Internationally, crude oil prices have plummeted below zero in April 2020, the first such instance in history. But as these prices have picked up, countries such as India, which are big importers of crude oil, tend to suffer. The prices of the Indian basket of crude oil, that is, the price at which India buys its crude oil, have gone up from less than $20 a barrel in April 2020 to around $65 barrel as of March end. What has made matters worse for Indian consumer is that thanks to the way the government taxes petrol and petroleum products, retail prices have stayed up even when crude oil prices went down. See the tape. Of the course, when crude oil prices themselves rise, it becomes a double whammy, but the fact is, as the charts show, fuel is not the only commodity whose prices are going up fast. Well, if we look up at the data, spikes were seen in the retail inflation rate in May. Both food and non-food goods have shot up. The red bars show the jump in May and the grey bars show the average jump in the past 3 months in the link in the description. It is for these reasons that when an analyst at Nomura put together the data across different parameters for India and other Asian countries to compare, the Indian situation appeared quite poor. Looking further at the data, it maps Indian and other Asian economies on GDP growth and inflation rate. At the bottom of the data is the Indian average, is the Asian average. On the retail inflation, it is quite clear that India is outlier here. No other country has faced or expects to face the high level of inflation that India is becoming used. In 2022, consumer prices will grow at a rate that is around 2.5 times more than the rest of Asia's average. On GDP growth in 2020, India was more badly hit than almost every country in the region. It is a matter of relief, however, that if we do not have another wave of COVID cases, India's economy should be able to grow at a faster clip than others. Beyond inflation and GDP growth rate lie the worries of unemployment in India. The table below puts together the data on 3 key variables that must be mapped. The way to read this table is to look at the rightmost column, the labor force participation rate first. The participation rate essentially tells us what percentage of people who are within the working age, that is 15 to 59 years, group wants to be part of the workforce. A low labor force participation rate undermines the country's overall productivity and well-being because fewer people are making themselves available for economic activity. As the data shows, the participation rate was quite low in India even before COVID pandemic. For an instance, in India before COVID, only about 43% of the people in the working age group were looking for work, while in China and Indonesia, this proportion was 76 and 69% respectively. This meant India was not using all its human resources, its demographic dividend. Further data also shows that after COVID, while other Asian countries have almost recovered their much higher participation rates, India has not been able to recover its already lower participation rate. Now, look at the unemployment rate, the first column in the table in the link in description. This is the percentage of people who have decided to participate in the workforce, looked for work but didn't get it. 2 things stand about India's unemployment rate. The third variable in this table is the absolute number of people employed in the economy. Let's look at the middle column in the description link. Data shows that the total number of people employed in Indian economy today is over 52% less than the number of people employed before the pandemic. In other words, instead of creating jobs, the economy has been extinguished close to 22 million jobs. The silence of these unemployment numbers is that more GDP recovery does not always imply a recovery in jobs. Lastly, why compare India to its Asian peers? Because India has more in common with these countries than it has with developed economies.